Lelita and the Spirit of Lelita and the Spirit of Waters. Episode 1. She was born with spirits, then they came for her. Before we begin, drop a comment below. Tell us where you are listening from. What city? What country? What time is it where you are? Let us see how far this story reaches across the world. The village at the edge of the river. In the time before the world forgot itself, there was a village called Asante Enkran, nestled between a great forest and a river so wide and so deep that the elders said it had no bottom. They said the river remembered everything. Every prayer whispered into it, every tear that ever fell, every name of every child ever born on its banks. The village was alive with the sounds of mourning, drums calling the fishermen to the water, women pounding yam, their rhythms speaking to one another across the open air, children running between the huts, laughing with their entire bodies, smoke rising from cook fires and curling into a sky so blue it hurt to look at. And in the middle of it all, Lelita. She was 20 years old, tall and lean, with hands that moved like water when she worked, and eyes the color of deep river clay. She was not the most beautiful woman in the village, though she was beautiful, and she was not the strongest, though she was strong. What set her apart was something else entirely, something the other young women whispered about, half in awe, half in fear. The spirits walked with her. Her mother, Abena, was the village Vodou priestess, a woman whose gray-streaked hair and slow, deliberate movements commanded a silence wherever she walked. From the time Lelita could barely speak, Abena had been teaching her, not just the prayers and the rituals, not just the names of the loa and the offerings they required, but the listening, the deep, careful art of listening to what the water said. The spirits do not shout, Abena had told her once, years ago, pressing Lelita's small hands into the surface of the river. They whisper, and most people are too full of their own noise to hear. But you, my child, you hear. You have always heard. She was right. Lelita had always felt it, a pull at the base of her chest whenever she stood near water, a pressure behind her eyes like something trying to speak. She had learned to open herself to it, to become still as the surface of the river at dawn and let the voices rise through her. The greatest of these voices belonged to Mami Wata, the spirit of the waters, ancient and vast and strange, who wore the form of a woman with the tail of a serpent and lived in the deep places where light could not reach. Lelita had first felt her presence at the age of 7, standing alone at the riverbank at dusk while the fireflies began to flicker. Something had moved in the water, too large to be a fish, too slow to be a crocodile. And then a voice had come, clear as a bell struck in a silent room. Do not be afraid, child of the shore. I have watched you since before your mother knew your name. One day, you will need me, and I will come. She had run home screaming. Abena had held her and rocked her, and then, when the screaming stopped, had smiled. She found you, Abena had whispered. I wondered when she would. Since that day, Lelita had spent years learning the language of the water spirit. Not words exactly, more like feelings, like pressure changes, like the difference between a current pulling you forward and a current pulling you down. She could call rain. She could still a river's surface in a storm. Once, memorably, she had drawn a flood 3 feet back from the village's lowest huts when the rains came too hard and too fast. Her father, Kofi, a broad-shouldered fisherman with a laugh that shook the ground, had clapped her on the back and announced to anyone who would listen that his daughter was more powerful than a crocodile and twice as beautiful. She had laughed. He had laughed. Even her little brother Kwame, only 12 years old and obsessed with carved wooden horses, had laughed. It had been a good life, a whole life. She did not know it was about to end. If you are feeling this story already, drop a comment right now. Tell us where you are, what time it is, and whether you have ever felt something watching you from the water. We read every single one. And if you are not subscribed yet, do it now. Hit that bell. The day the sky turned wrong. It was the river that warned her first. Lelita was at the water's edge, washing fabric in the morning light, when she felt it, a tremor in the current, like a heartbeat skipping. The fish vanished from the shallows all at once, as if a single thought had passed between them. The river birds went silent. Even the insects stopped. She pressed her fingertips to the surface of the water and listened. Something comes. Something made of iron and hunger. Run, child, run now! But she did not run. Not yet. Because part of her, the stubborn, practical part that her father had given her, needed to see. She saw. They came out of the tree line on the northern side of the village. 20 men in heavy coats despite the heat, armed with muskets and chains, moving with the organized efficiency of people who had done this many times before. Behind them, ropes in hand, were a dozen African men in European-style clothing, their faces arranged into expressions of professional blankness. Collaborators. That was the word her mother had used in her low, bitter voice when she spoke of such men. The village did not die quietly. The drums began immediately, the alarm rhythm that Lelita had heard in drills but never in earnest. Men grabbed spears and machetes. Women ran for their children. But the slavers had guns, and guns were a language that spears could not answer, and within an hour that felt like a lifetime compressed into screaming and smoke and the crack of musket fire, Asante Nkran was broken open like a fruit. Lelita saw her father fall, not dead, but struck on the head and crumpled to the dirt. She saw her little brother Kwame seized, still clutching one of his wooden horses, his face a mask of pure bewilderment, as if he could not process what was happening fast enough to be afraid. She heard her mother's voice somewhere behind her, not screaming. Abena never screamed, but chanting, low and fierce, the words of a working. And then 2 pairs of hands grabbed Lelita from behind, and the world went white with rage. She called the water. She felt it respond, felt the river surge at her call, felt Mami Wata's presence rush up through the ground and into her like lightning up a rod. The air around her dropped 10 degrees. The ground darkened with sudden moisture. One of the men holding her released her arm with a shout, his hand gone blue with cold. But there were too many of them, and she was too surprised, and the blow that came from behind, a gun stock against the side of her head, was fast and heavy and final. She went down into darkness. The last thing she felt as consciousness slipped away was the river weeping. And the river wept. Somewhere behind her, in the burning village, her mother Abena was still chanting. Her father Kofi lay unconscious in the dirt. Her little brother Kwame was being dragged toward the same ship, still holding his wooden horse. And Lelita, the one the river had chosen, the one Mami Wata herself had spoken to since she was 7 years old, was in chains, in the dark. On a ship heading away from everything she had ever known. But the ocean remembers, and she is not alone yet. What happens when Lelita wakes up, chained in the dark, surrounded by strangers, in the middle of an ocean she has never seen, and feels something enormous stir beneath the water? What happens when iron meets a woman the spirits already claimed? Episode 2 answers that question. And trust me when I tell you, you are not ready for what she does next. If this story moved you tonight, like this video right now, leave a comment telling us where in the world you are listening from. We read every single one. Subscribe and turn on the bell, because episode 2 drops in 7 days. 63 people are about to be freed by a woman in chains. Do not miss it. Episode 2 in 7 days.